power from Nurgle's gifts, revolted by his touch. Fear not. Nurgle forgives your ignorance, for he is a generous god, and will bless you all the same. Soon your fear will melt away before the Plague Lord's generosity, and with blinded eyes you will see the glorious truth.
Lord Lugorius, during the boarding of the frigate Noble Blade. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and important units of the Warhammer 40k setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we are to deal with the elite of the Deathguard, those foul worshippers of Nurgle, who were once warriors of the Imperium, some of the most rugged and resourceful of all of the Emperor's Adeptus Astartes, his Angels of Death, his Space Marines. Oh, how the mighty have fallen, for they are some of the most feared champions of the dark powers of chaos, for they simply will not die. Not only do they wear tactical dreadnought armor, Terminator warplate, but their natural resistance to injury was ever the most of any of the Marines, let alone now, when they have the power of Nurgle coursing through their veins, suffusing their every sinew with the power of corruption. They are all but insensate to pain, all but invulnerable to damage, even to those rare weapons that are able to pierce some of the best protection extant in all of the grim darkness of the far future. Terminator Armor. To see the Deathguard approaching is one thing. To witness their elite in action is entirely another. An experience that very few survive, and none who do ever forget. But as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, Blightlord Terminators. Blightlord Terminators are relentless and unstoppable, elite Deathguard warriors bound forever to mutated suits of cataphracti armor. They stalk forward with guns blazing, mercilessly mowing down rank after rank of the enemy. Combi weapons, plague spewers, and blight launchers add to the fusillade, reducing infantry and vehicles to slop. At the last, the Terminators break into a lumbering charge, hefting huge weapons with which to hack and bludgeon the enemy. Flails of corruption entangle weapons and limbs in sizzling corrosive barbs. Bubotic axes and bale swords tear ragged wounds into which 1,000 poxes seep. By the time the Blightlord Terminators stomp on in search of new victims, nothing remains of their enemy but maggot-riddled corpses. Combining the protective powers of cataphractii warplate with the disease resilience bestowed by Nurgle's gifts, Blightlord Terminators are terrifyingly hard to kill. They take great pride in this fact, advancing contemptuously into the teeth of the fiercest firestorms, mocking their enemies' attempts to lay them low. This arrogance grates upon their Deathguard brothers, but the Blightlords make such exceptional shock troops that it is overlooked, or even condoned by their masters. Most Vectoriums include at least one band of Blightlord Terminators for breach assaults, boarding actions, and sudden teleport strikes. And it is a rare ship of the Plague Fleets that takes to the tide of the warp without a complement of Blightlords aboard. Due to the amount of time they spend embarked upon diseased warships, Blightlord Terminators are saturated with empiric entropy. This foulness pours off them in waves, rotting flesh and corroding metal in an area around them. With the Blightlord's tread, crawling veins of corruption radiate outwards like spiders' webs of rot and rust. An enemy needs only to be gripped by them in order for these energies to start agonizingly eating them away, while vehicles and fortifications exposed to the Blightlord's malignant presence soon slump and crumble. On many ships, Blightlords act as an elite garrison, standing ready to defend the bridge, magazines, or engine arms at a moment's notice. During void battles, Plague Fleet captains bring their ships in close to an enemy vessel, allowing massed formations of Blightlords to teleport directly aboard. Like parasites hatching in the body of a luckless victim, the Deathguard Terminators begin their destructive rampage. putting their way down narrow corridors and corroding through sealed bulkheads. The Blightlords mercilessly crush the ship's defenders while spreading their corruption through its decks.
Even whilst we fight, we watch. Even whilst we kill, we judge. Midst war's full fury, still we see. Midst all your guards, still we strike. We are the Deathlord's icy gaze, and we are his reaping blade.
Oath of the Deathshroud. Deathshroud Terminators. The Pale Harvestmen, the Scythes of Nurgle, the Eyes of Mortarion. The elite warriors of the Deathshroud go by many names, and everyone is redolent with a miasma of fear and menace. Such a reputation is richly deserved. Swollen with unnatural power, the Deathshroud tower over their enemies. Rusted gauntlets and squirming tentacles clutch huge battle scythes known as man-reapers. Cursed weapons that slice heads from shoulders and limbs from torsos with every swing. Clouds of plague flies boil from the Deathshroud, while vile smog spills from vents in their armor to choke and blind their foes. The warriors of the Deathshroud are sublimely skilled, whirling and striking with a speed that belies their massive distended frames. Yet it is not merely their abilities in battle that make them so feared. The Deathshroud are the hand-picked champions of Mortarion, his dark emissaries, and wherever they go they bear the authority of their gene-sire with them. They rarely speak but to convey Mortarion's commands, and when they do so, their voice emerges as a rattling hiss. The Deathshroud fight in ominous silence, uttering no battle cry and rising to no challenge, embodying the faceless, wordless onset of inescapable death as their shadows fall across their enemies. Even before he turned to chaos, Mortarion maintained his Deathshroud as a cadre of elite bodyguards. They were selected by the Deathlord from those stoic warriors who had alone survived when their brothers had not, and upon being seconded to the Deathshroud, such battle brothers were recorded in the Legion annals as slain. Faces hidden, the Deathshroud remain anonymous, a menacing and ineffable presence singularly devoted to protecting their Primarch. At all times there would be at least 2 of the Deathshroud within 49 paces of Mortarion, alert for any threat to his person and willing to lay down their lives for his. Mortarion still recruits the Deathshroud in this fashion, but their battlefield role has changed since his ascension to demonhood. Now the Deathshroud are his representatives, his iron gauntlet that can be extended to shield or to crush. Though the Deathshroud often still fight at Mortarion's side, bands of them are also dispatched to form honor guards for Deathguard lords, plague surgeons, and other champions of power and importance. Their presence is a mixed blessing at best. The Deathshroud will fight with all their skill and strength in support of their assigned champion, and prove to be an undeniable asset in battle. Yet all the while, the Deathshroud are judging upon their master's behalf. If the champion is successful, the Deathshroud depart at battle's end, leaving as silently as they came. If their charge fails in his duties, however, the judgment of Mortarion is swift, deadly, and utterly inescapable. End quote. The sons of Mortarion, the Pale King, the Deathlord, the Prince of Decay. Even before they turned to chaos, they were always a force to be reckoned with, even amongst their brethren Astartes. Without pity or mercy, they strode toward their enemy in a way that actually exemplified the intent of the Emperor. For once upon a time, all Marines were to be seen coming, were to be feared before they even fired a single shot, because they did not hide their advent, did not avoid direct combat, did not perform tricks and subterfuges. For the Emperor, the intent was to cow the entire galaxy, not just to defeat its denizens, to win the battle in the hearts and minds of his opponents before they had even fully arrived. Now times have moved on, and the Astartes have developed over 30 years to become a fully realized force with all of the specializations, often doubled up or more, so that they could be seen as one complete force, one army that required absolutely nothing to be effective, and only really used other forces for convenience and ease. Expedients, such as the Titans of the Adeptus Mechanicus. But in those days it was the Marines, and only the Marines, that brought the galaxy to heel by dint of their courage, tenacity, and a river of their own blood. Now times have moved on, with the writing of the Horus Heresy and the development of the entire setting. But I for one sometimes look back on those simpler times with a glaze of nostalgia. Are things better now? Probably. They are certainly more defined, more developed, and to a great extent more appropriate to reflect the massed endeavours of humanity, not just of the Space Marines, in the actions and successes of the Great Crusade. But some part of me will always look at a Marine and say, it is you, the Marine, practically alone, who went out into a dark and terrible galaxy filled with a cornucopia of chaos, xenos, psychers, and monsters, and not only freed countless billions and trillions of humans from their yoke, but also exacted our revenge on them for the atrocities they had dealt to our race. And it is in this memory, this knowledge, that the true shame, the travesty of the fall of these mighty warriors to the corrupting powers that holds the most drama and romance to me. For there will never be a being so terrible, so remorseless, so pitiless, as a being of light, who has been drowned in and turned to darkness. As are the Deathguard. Never forget that they were some of the mightiest of the Marines, that they are the reward for the weakness of our race that could never be fully wiped out, wiped away by the Emperor of Mankind. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to the Blightlords and Deathshroud Terminator elite of the Deathguard. If so, then please do consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then also hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. Please also be aware that a quick share of the video goes a long way to the continuation of our little site and community, and would be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make time for fun. Toodaloo.